something's been on my mind recently, and I can't stop thinking about it. So, a few years ago, I decided I was going to purge all my social media. I was on, what was I on? I was on Twitter, I was on Blue Sky, I was on Tumblr, I was on Reddit, I was on TikTok. I was pretty much covering all the bases. I wasn't on Facebook, but I was in those other four spaces a lot, and that's where I spent the majority of my time. That's what the majority of my life was, thinking about things to post, thinking about upcoming things that I could coordinate as sort of content, that kind of thing. And I'm aware that YouTube, some people call YouTube social media. I don't. I never have. At one point, it was integrated with Google Plus. That sort of dropped off there. So to me, YouTube has always been a separate thing. But I decided I was going to completely purge it because I realized I know the effect this is having on me. And if I'm so tense all the time, and if I'm so just on edge all the time, maybe I should sort of decrease my exposure to the things that cause that. And so I decided to just go cold turkey with it, because if I've deleted all of my accounts, eventually after I think like 14 days or something, you can't reactivate it. So then what's done is done. And I did that. And at first it was really hard because the thing about those apps is that they are designed, and I'm surprised the companies are so open and transparent about this, that they are designed by neurosurgeons who understand how to get people addicted to things, how to get them addicted to dopamine and to the feeling of relevance and importance and that kind of thing. And so it was really hard detaching from that initially. But then, eventually, after riding it out and sort of putting myself in a situation in which I couldn't turn back, I didn't so much adapt to life without it, but I was able to readjust to the life I had before it. And so that did make an immediate difference in my life. I wasn't feeling like I had to be successful. I didn't feel like I had to be constantly comparing myself to other people. I mean, it is all very superficial and stupid. And the, the way that it sort of what inclines people to be competing in terms of who seems to be happiest, who seems to be doing well, who seems to be doing successfully. You know, who's just bought a house, who's just bought a car, who's just got a promotion, who's just got so many followers, etc. That kind of thing. I was aware that that was basically destroying me. And after I took that definitive step and just said, right, no more of this, it did make a considerable improvement in my life after so long. And now I'm happy without it. The problem is, though, I live in what I can only describe with a quote from Cyberpunk 2077, which is the middle of bumfuck nowhere. I don't think anyone who actually lives outside of my town has ever heard of it before. And that's the problem. We've got like one cinema, one train station, pretty much one of everything apart from vape shops. But we all know why there are so many of those around. So it's a tiny little place, and it's the kind of place where you can't really get anywhere without transport. Nothing is walkable. If you want to go somewhere, you either have to rely on the bus service or you need to be able to drive there yourself. That's the kind of place I live in. It's not a big city with a big nightlife. It's not an easy place to meet new people because there are so few things around. Supposedly they might be building a bowling alley. I'll believe we actually have a bowling alley when I'm there. But in terms of a social life, having one in this town is basically impossible. Unless you already have friends, somehow, it just doesn't really happen here. And the big problem for me is that ever since I quit social media, I've had to deal with the fact that I also live in a place that is barely on the map, that has almost nothing to do there, and in which making friends there is basically impossible because there's nothing to do there and because there's almost no one there. And a lot of the time, sometimes when the isolation really gets to me, I find myself tempted to go back to the way things were, to go back to social media. But every time I feel that way, I have to remind myself of why I left in the first place, because I knew that it was having a negative impact on my mental health, which it was, and I have felt mentally healthier since I quit. There are still certain things that I struggle with, but that's just based on the way the world is. But I find myself being tempted to go back because there's nothing here. Like, I quit that virtual space to go back to real life, but in real life, for me, in my current circumstances, there isn't anything there anyway. So you might think, well, why not go back to social media then? Because I suspected the effect it was having on me mentally, and that was confirmed when I stepped away from it and things started to get better. After a year, I thought I should have never joined up to any of this stuff to begin with. The problem is, though, that because of the fact that there is basically nothing to do in my town and no one to do it with anyway, I find myself always feeling that temptation to go back. And I do wonder if one day I'm going to decide to go back to it. If I'm going to think, well, I only have one life, I may as well enjoy it. I may as well go back and be with those people. Because the thing is, I do have people I know on the internet that I've never actually that's not completely true. Almost none of them I've met in real life. There's a writer I got to know. I mean, a lot of people I know was actually through blogging, which is not social media. That's a completely different thing. We had a blogging community. So that's how we would get to know each other, even without social media being part of the picture. But that did help when we were all following each other and sharing each other's posts and just interacting with each other and taking part in events. That's how we could network. But of course, like all good things, that close-knit community just sort of drifted apart. And it wasn't just because social media fragmented, it was because lives changed, the world changed, and every system is in decline. It's called entropy. That's what happens. Things drift apart. Galaxies drift apart. People drift apart. That's the way the world is. That's just people come together and then they move away from each other. That's just the way things work. Tide goes in, tide goes out. But the issue is those people, they are still there, and like one of them I kind of know in real life, but like we don't see each other on a regular basis because it's a long distance friendship. So I only see them every now and again when I happen to be in their part of the country, and I can tell them in advance I'm going to be there in your part of the country. Maybe we can meet up and have a chat and catch up on things. So I don't know whether or not you can say that we're friends if that's the way things work. I mean, maybe we can, but even if it is, it's not like a permanent fixture in my own life. And that's why I'm always feeling the temptation to go back. But the reason I don't is mainly because only once you quit can you really see the kind of impact it has on people in a bad way. Because the thing is, a lot of people I know in real life, and have known for a long time, they have completely changed in the past few years. They have basically gone crazy. And it's because the way that politics has affected people, that it's caused that social media fragmentation where now you can basically pick which reality you want to live in. You can either pick Twitter and live in the conservative reality, you can pick Blue Sky and live in the liberal reality, you can pick Tumblr and pick in the radical liberal reality, you can pick Reddit and live in the completely stupid reality. You know, that there are even other places like 4chan, which is completely doolally, and makes zero sense to me at all. And I'm aware that there are other places, and that there's stuff like what's it called? That sort of site that's like MySpace, but it's relatively new. That doesn't really matter anyway because I can't access that website because it's blocked in my region, and I'm not sure why that is, but I can guess. And even if I could, I don't know if I'd want to access it. But the problem is, people are now able. It's now easier than ever for people to pick their filter bubble, for people to decide which opinions they want to expose themselves to and which ones they want to never expose themselves to, which is exactly what these Silicon Valley companies want. They're basically selling packaged ideologies. You know how Hollywood sort of doesn't really make films? They make packaged genres. They'll only produce a screenplay if it has a clearly identifiable genre so that they can produce it with all the tropes of that genre and then market it with all the tropes of that genre to sell it to the people who like that genre. That's what Silicon Valley does with ideologies. It doesn't matter which one you want because it will always have that. Regardless, they don't care. They just want you to buy just one of them and to remain a customer of that ideology that they can continue selling to you. Regardless of how insanely unethical that is, for them to basically be selling entire mindsets to you. But this is something that only becomes apparent once you stop using all of these bullshit apps. And then you can see in real life, amongst people you know, what it's doing to them, the way that they don't have real personalities anymore, because that's all been carved away. And these ideologies they've got have now sort of replaced that. And so every single thing they think and every single thing that comes out of their mouth, they are thinking about it through the lens of whichever uh, place on the political spectrum they've picked, whether they're on the left or the right, whether they're an authoritarian, whether they're a libertarian, regardless, absolutely every single thing to them has now become a big political issue, even when it doesn't need to be. And that perfectly ordinary things that have perfectly simple explanations have to become wrapped in this excuse to go on a rant about them, about the ones that I've chosen to isolate myself from, you know? And like the issue for me is that it's impossible to really have any proper human relationships now, because almost everyone has chosen which Silicon Valley filter bubble they want to be a customer of and to live in. And for people like me on the outside who can see what's happening, it's basically impossible to have any proper friends because everyone is now fucking crazy because they've decided to sell their souls because it's easier to let people decide what you see and what opinions you get exposed to. And so I just think, what am I meant to do exactly? Because the problem is, I'm not a centrist by any means. I'm definitely not neutral. But to me, the issue is that, how exactly do I put this? I'm usually good at coming up with ways of explaining what's on my mind. What was I talking about just now? Yeah, so the way that everything has become this sort of strange theatrical bullshit where nothing that happens can just happen. Everything that does happen is either something that is politically good for me or politically good for them. I think people are just forgetting how to actually enjoy the life that they have. And this is something that you only realize when you're one of the people that doesn't use it. It's kind of like everyone in your life being a drug addict, and all of them are convinced that only the drug they're addicted to is the good one, and that the people addicted to all the other drugs are weird. Apart from the fact that you are also addicted to one. You just think that, well, it's okay for me to be addicted to one. You know, it's okay for me to be addicted to marijuana because that's the good drug. You know, I'm not one of those cocaine people. I'm not one of those meth people. You know, the one that I'm addicted to, that's fine because it's the good one. And actually, I'm not addicted to it. I can stop anytime I want. The fact that I happen to be constantly doing it all day and that I'd have a problem not being able to do it all day, that's actually irrelevant because it's the good one. That's fine. You can't be addicted to something good, can you? And it's really weird to me. It's like bragging about, yeah, so I have this STD, but that's okay because it's the good one. It's the good one, you know? Hey, I'm not one of those chlamydia people, you know? I only get like the warts and stuff. It's fine. It's fine. Mine's a good one. And it's like, it's just so strange to me that people are like this, and I just don't understand it. Because I suppose what I'm basically saying is that ideologies are made up. They're like religions. Religions were invented by people. They don't come from God. They were invented by people who realized thousands of years ago that if you invent a god and if you invent a religion and if you invent that god's rules for you, it's a very good way for you to control people and get money from them. And that's what ideologies are. They are basically religions without the god bit. Instead, you worship just a mortal human being, you know? And it's not a good thing. It's not a good idea to have. I mean, yes, you can have values and you can have views, but I don't think any ideology is a good thing, ultimately, because it replaces you. People talk about, oh, we're all being replaced. Yeah. Have you ever considered that maybe you are allowing yourself to be replaced by a fake version of you that has become completely distorted because you've allowed yourself to be sort of stripped away and replaced with a single personality trait that is entirely based on whichever political thing you have arbitrarily decided to have. It's just really ridiculous to me, and the problem is that even though there are people who I could sort of speak to more regularly, instead of having to sort of email them every now and again, and instead of having to just see them whenever I happen to be in their part of the country, I could be able to talk to them sort of daily. But I mean, yeah, sure, we have each other's phone numbers, but there's never really a reason to call them. And like, I feel like if I do that, it has to be something important and I have to justify it, and I don't know if they're busy. Like, what are they doing right now? I don't want to just intrude into their life. It's weird, you know? And like, that's why I'm constantly toing and froing between, well, there is basically nothing to do here and no one to do nothing with. If I go back to the way things were, I mean, for all the sort of mental health impact, at least I would have other people there to help me realize that I'm not crazy, or that if I am, I'm only crazy in a good way. And there are people there I know who share my interest in things, who like the same anime as me, who like the same video games as me, that sort of thing. And it's fun to sort of reconnect with them, I suppose, because it is like we're in this shared virtual space where distance and time is no longer an issue. Sure, I suppose in some ways it's a miracle of human engineering. But the big issue to me is that the only way of doing that requires me to pick which filter bubble I want to be in, and I refuse to do that. I refuse to pick which filter bubble I want to be in. I am not in any of the filter bubbles. The only way I know what I think about things comes from my own instinct, which is the only way I need to know. You know, you can't have a bad emotion. You can feel negative emotions, but you can't have a bad emotion, because that's what tells you who you are and how you think about the world. So that's the only metric I need. How do I instinctively feel about this thing? Oh, then I guess that's what the truth is to me. And that's the only thing the truth ever can be. You know? So the only way of sort of getting over this barrier of there being no one and nothing, and to go back to having people there in my pocket that I can talk to all the time, requires me to choose which bullshit I want to inject into my life. And I don't know if it's worth it. I keep telling myself it's not worth it. Because the thing is, all the social media sites make fun of all the other ones. You know? It's kind of like this really weird game of rock, paper, scissors. They're all trying to prove that actually they're the only smart one. No, you're not. You're all fucking stupid. Otherwise, you wouldn't be using social media. So it's this dilemma I have. Spend my life alone, or just swallow the same bullshit that all my other friends are swallowing. What do I do? You know, it's... Now, you might say that you don't actually need friends in real life to live a happy and contented and fulfilled life, which I agree with to an extent. And you might say that, okay, but if you don't know those people in real life, they're not really your friends, which I would kind of disagree with. I really don't know. Usually I like to come to some sort of conclusion with this. I don't have one. So this is a pretty open-ended problem. But honestly, if there is anybody out there watching this who somehow is still watching this, even 23 minutes into the video, please, if you feel the same way as me, tell me. Tell me I'm not crazy, and tell me that actually I am not the only person who feels this way. And who knows, if you want to be friends, then I don't know, leave me a comment or something. Oh, surely there must be a third option.